Hello students, welcome to MCQ video discussion on Medico apps. Today I'll be discussing an MCQ on a very important topic, that is on G.V. Black classification of dental caries. Now this Dr. G.V. Black's classification of dental caries is one of the most important topics which you will come across in all of your 4 years of dentistry, because based on this classification you will be able to perform all your operative dentistry classes. So let's start today's discussion, but before that I want you to subscribe my YouTube channel and hit the bell icon so that whenever I discuss such kind of important MCQs and short concepts with you all, you will be notified. So let's start by first subscribing and then by understanding and resolving this MCQ. So the first question here I am going to ask you is from the operative dentistry, and the question is being asked in the All India PG exam, in PGI, in AIMS, all state PG exams. Lots and lots of questions have been framed from this particular topic. So we will be resolving the MCQ which I am going to discuss. Along with that, I'll be also mentioning the other MCQs which have come across in all these examinations. So the question here framed is that cavities begin in the proximal surface of bicuspids and molars are classified as class 1, class 2, class 4 or class 6 cavity. Now let's start our today's discussion on Dr. GV's classification. The classification is for the dental caries. Now, Dr. G.V. Black basically classified these dental caries into 6 classes. But the only difference which he made was that he made this classification based on the treatment of anatomical areas and the restorative design. Now, what do you understand by that? So, it means that he made sure that the classification is based on the particular area where the dental caries has taken place and the particular type of restorative material which we will be using and the material which will be suiting according to the anatomical area where we are making the design accordingly. So what are those 6 classes which Dr. G.V. Black has classified? So we will be understanding one by one all those 6 classes of Dr. G.V. Black's classification. So I'll start by first understanding class 1 of Dr. G.V.'s classification of dental caries. So what did he say for class 1? So class 1 means pit-and-fissure caries. Now pit-and-fissure caries, you all know that our teeth has pits and fissures. Now if a carie is present there, what you'll call it as? We will call it as pit-and-fissure caries. Now pit-and-fissure caries can occur in all the teeth. So specifically, if you divide these tooth structure for the molars, premolars, for the anterior teeth, for the posterior teeth, I'll be mentioning, and he has actually mentioned all these 3 conditions. So the first condition is for the occlusal surface, for the occlusal surface of the premolars and molars. Now, if a pit and fissure carie is present on the occlusal surface of the premolars and molars, we will call it as class 1 classification of dental caries according to the G.V. Black. Now, the other point here, the other sub-classification under class 1 is the occlusal 2/3 of the facial and lingual surface. That means the buccal surface and the lingual surface. So, buccal surface and lingual surface, that means I am here discussing about the mandibular teeth. So the occlusal surface of the mandibular, buccal surface and the lingual surface. That means if this is the buccal surface, this is the lingual surface. So the buccal surface might have a pit and fissure, or a lingual surface might have a pit and fissure caries. And the third one is, even as I have mentioned, the anterior and posterior both teeth are involved. So the anterior teeth here I am discussing about is the lingual surface of incisors. The anterior teeth, that is the central and the lateral incisors, have dental caries. The pit and fissure caries are present on the lingual surface. So this is your anterior teeth, this is the the lingual surface. So there is a cavity. If a caries is present on the lingual surface of the incisors, the central and the lateral, or even including the canines, that is what you call, or we will call it as pit and fissure caries, because the pits are involved in those particular teeth. So I hope you have understood that the pit and fissure caries involving all the teeth, including the occlusal surface of molars, premolars. These are the molars, these are the premolars. The facial and lingual surface, that is the buccal and the lingual surface of the molars. Like for example, this is a best figure where you can understand that this is a pit and fissure caries, and this is present on the buccal surface or the lingual surface of the molar. And lastly, even the lingual surface of the incisors and the canines, the anterior teeth are involved. All those comes under class 1 classification. With this, now I am going to move a little more. Now, this was for just on the occlusal surface. With the second class, that is the class 2, here the caries which are involving the proximal surface of the premolars and molars. Now, before that, you need to understand what is proximal surface. So, proximal surface is nothing but the surface which are in contact with the two teeth. So, if this is a molar and this is a premolar, the two surfaces which are meeting together, this surface is known as proximal surface. So, here I am saying what the Dr. G.V. Black did say. He said that caries in the proximal surface of the premolars. That means the caries on the proximal surface, the two meeting surface, if a carie is present there, if a cavity is present there in the premolars and molars, we will call it as class 2 cavity or class 2 caries. Now, as I have told you that he also mentioned the anatomical areas along with the design. Now, what was the design? It was about the restorative design. Now, here, if a mesial surface is involved. So, as you can see, this is the mesial surface and this is the distal surface of the molar. So, if only mesial surface is involved, what you will call it as? So, the mesio-occlusal surface is involved, then we will make a mesio-occlusal conventional preparation will be made. Okay, only involving this particular surface, because only the mesial surface of the molar is involved. I'm not discussing about the premolars. I'm only discussing about this molar in this image. So if only mesial surface is involved, what you will call it as? Mesio-occlusal caries. And if a distal surface is involved, this is the distal surface of the molar is involved, we will call it as disto-occlusal surface or disto-occlusal preparation. But what if both the mesial and the distal surface is involved? Then we will call it as MOD preparation, that is the mesio-occlusal distal preparation. Okay. So I hope this point is clear, that if the mesial surface of the proximal contact is involved, what you will call it as? Distal is involved, what you will call it as? And if both the mesial and the distal surface both are involved, in such cases, what you will call, and I hope you understood that is called as MOD, that is the mesial occlusal distal preparation or the caries. Now I want you to answer that what you will call this one. Which surface is involved in this image and what you'll call it as? Yes, this is a distal surface of the premolar is involved. So we will call it as disto-occlusal preparation. So the caries which are involving the proximal surface, it can be either mesial or the distal of the premolars and molars, comes under the class 2. So class 1 was all about pit and fissure caries. Class 2 is all about proximal caries. Coming to the class 3. Now class 3 is caries involving the proximal surface of the anterior teeth. In class 2, we had discussed caries involving the proximal surface of the posterior teeth, that is the premolars and molars. In class 3, it is proximal surface of the anterior teeth. But there's a very important point and a significant point you need to remember for class 3 is that in proximal surface, if this is your anterior, if this is your incisors, definitely you will call this entire surface as proximal surface. Okay, when two incisors are meeting. But here, a very important clue is that the incisal edges are not involved. Only the proximal surface is involved. That means, as you can see in this image, these are the proximal surfaces where the two teeth are meeting. Okay, only the proximal surface is involved, not the incisal edge. This is the incisal edge I am talking, and you know that what is the incisal edge. So do remember, class 2 was proximal surface of premolars and molars. Class 3 is proximal surface of anterior teeth without involving the incisal edge. Okay, please do make a point about it. This is the key point of this class 3 cavity preparation and or the class 3 caries. Moving to class 4, what is this? This is very simple. You can correlate it with class 3, that is the proximal surface of the anterior teeth. You know that. But here there is an involvement of the incisal edge. Okay, now here the proximal surfaces are involved and even the incisal surfaces are involved. So if this is an anterior teeth, the proximal surface is involved and even the incisal surface is involved, and that is what your class 4 is. So I hope you have been understanding this entire 4 classes which I have just made you understand. Class 1 was all about pit and fissure, class 2 was all about proximal surface, class 3 is all about the class 2 was the proximal surface of the premolars and molars only. Class 3 was the proximal surface of the anterior teeth, but the incisal edge was not involved. And class 4 is proximal surface of the anterior teeth, which is involving the incisal edges also. Okay, with this, I am now going to move to the class 5. Let's jump to the class 5 and just understand what exactly is this class 5. So here the caries are seen at the gingival third. Gingival third, you know that the lower part, the part which is the part of the tooth which is covered by the gingiva. So if the caries are present on this gingival third part of the buccal or the lingual surface of anterior and posterior teeth. Now here, do remember, here I am discussing about both the anterior and posterior teeth. There is no classification to that. Anterior and posterior teeth both are coming in class 5, but the caries are seen on the gingival third. And gingival third, where the gingival third is present? On the buccal surface and the lingual surface. That means the buccal surface towards the buccal mucosa and lingual surface, that means towards the tongue. So here the caries are present at the gingival third. So this is an original picture. This is the gingiva. Okay, this is the gingiva and this is the teeth. So the gingival third surface here, if the caries are present here involving the facial, that is the buccal and the lingual surface of the anterior and posterior teeth, is class 5. So the key points here are gingival third and the anterior and the posterior, where on the buccal and the lingual surface of these anterior and posterior teeth. So I hope you have remembered class 5 also. Moving to class 6, and that is the last class of Dr. G.V.'s classification for dental caries, and that is when the caries are involving the incisal edges of the anterior teeth. Now just tell me this, does the anterior teeth have cusp? No, they don't have. What do they have? They have incisal edges. What are incisal edges? If I am saying that this is the central incisor, these are the incisal edges which I have just mentioned in class 2 and in class 3 and class 4. So if the caries are present and they are involving the incisal edges of this anterior teeth and the cusp tip. Now cusp tip, where will be the cusp tip will be present? They will be present on the posterior teeth. So these are the cusp tip. If the caries are present on these cusp tip of the posterior teeth without involving any other surface, that means without involving any buccal surface, proximal surface or the lingual surface, that is what you classify it as class 6. That is, simply you will say that caries involving the incisal edges of the anterior, cusp tip of the posterior without involving any other surface is your class 6. So I hope you have understood this easy classification of Dr. G.V.'s the classification of Dr. G.V. Black of caries. Okay, now let's move to our question which we were about to resolve, and here the question is that the caries beginning in the proximal surface. Now if this is the key point, the first key point, proximal surface, that means we are discussing about class 2. Okay, now proximal surface was even in class 2, class 3, class 4. But here the other key point of the question is it is involving the bicuspids and the molars. What are bicuspids? They are the premolars. Bicuspids mean premolars. So the proximal surface of the premolars and molars. Now, what was class 2? Class 2 was all about proximal surface of the premolars and the molars. And class 3 was proximal surface of the anterior without involving what? The incisal edges. And class 4 was proximal surface when involving even the incisal edges. So your answer, will it be class 1? No, it's a pit-and-fissure caries. Class 2, yes, that is your answer, proximal surface involving the premolars and the molars. What is class 4? I want you to answer. It is the proximal surface of the anterior teeth involving the incisal edges. And what is class 6? We have just discussed the caries involving the incisal edges of the anterior, the cusp tip of the posterior teeth without involving any other surface. So that is class 6. So I hope you have now understood the classification of Dr. G.V. Black for the caries, and you are now able to resolve, even you are able to answer the viva questions if an examiner puts a caries tooth in front of you and ask you that what classification will be there. Other than that, there are certain more MCQs which can be framed, like the pit-and-fissure caries, what you will call it as class 1, yes. What are class 4? The proximal surface of the anterior teeth involving the incisal edges, and the wall absent in class 5 lesion is the pulpal wall. Now, why is this class 5? Because the gingival third of the facial and the lingual surfaces of anterior and posterior teeth are involved. So the pulpal wall is absent in this particular class. So I hope you have understood this Dr. G.V. Black's classification for caries. It is very, very important topic. You should remember this. And for reference, you can just watch my video. This is a very short video. And before going, don't forget to subscribe our BDS YouTube Express channel. And even if you want any sort of daily updates on on these important dental topics, you can join our exclusive WhatsApp group on www.medicoapps.org/group. The link of that group is also given in this description of the video. So kindly join our exclusive WhatsApp group to get all the updates, important concepts, to understand all those concepts. Thank you for now. Good day. Good luck.